The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the bonus show. Here's something interesting. Back when I worked in retail at Circuit City, as I've told a number of stories about before and will on the Friday show as well. When I worked at Circuit City, there would be the smokers and there would be the non-smokers. And the smokers, as was the case and is the case at many companies, because they smoke, because they're addicted to this nicotine, they are basically allowed to go and take 10-minute smoke breaks for the most part whenever they want. And it's sort of seen as different than just saying, I'm going to take a 10-minute break every 2 hours to just hang out in the back and read, even though I would argue that reading in the back for 10 minutes would be much more beneficial to everybody than it would be to take a 10-minute smoke break. A Japanese company is granting its non-smoking staff 6 extra days of vacation every year to make up for the time off that all of the smokers get in 10 to 15-minute increments for all the smoke breaks throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month and year. The marketing firm is Piala Inc., and they've introduced this new paid leave allowance in September when non-smokers rightfully complained, hey, listen, we work more than the smokers because they're constantly taking these breaks. I am 110% in favor of this.
Really?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because here's the thing. If you are saying that the smokers can take discretionary time off above and beyond whatever breaks they're allowed or whatever else the case may be, there should be something equivalent allowed for non-smokers. Now, if the company wants to say, hey, you know what, non-smokers, you can also take a 15-minute break every hour and a half or 2 hours. Okay, that's one thing. But presumably, you're only allowed to go and do the smoke breaks if you're actually smoking. You're not allowed to say, I'm going to go for a walk every 2 hours or whatever. So I actually think that this is a really, really good thing.
And a big part of this, too, is this Japanese firm is in a skyscraper.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they're on like the 20th floor. So
Sure.
you have to go down the elevator, take your 5 to 10 minute smoking break, and then come back up.
I agree.
That's pretty significant. I think it may be a tough thing to implement, though, because while some smokers smoke, 2 packs a day, others may just do it once after their lunch break. So how do you implement that?
Well, I think that if you smoke a cigarette on the way back from your lunch break, you're not going to be identified as one of the people that is regularly taking 15-minute breaks for smoking, right? I mean, you have one cigarette on the way back in. I don't know. Yeah, there's some element of this that would probably depend on the honor system, I guess. And I understand that there's something that seems a little bit unfair about it. The reason I like it, though, is that it should not be an advantage to the employee in terms of how much you're expected to be in your office because you're addicted to cigarettes, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that should be providing a better work situation just because you have to go and smoke cigarettes.
You mentioned your Circuit City experience. I had the same thing when I was at Domino's, too. I mean, people would just leave the make line to go smoke a cigarette. And because it's considered a need, it's something that they're addicted to. Yeah. I mean, it's just kind of accepted, but it is unfair.
Let me ask you this. And please be honest. And of course, as with all Pat comments related to his employment at Domino's Pizza,
I'm getting nervous.
Domino's are franchises, and nothing that we talk about is any kind of reflection necessarily on the corporate structure of Domino's Pizza. Did employees wash their hands before starting to make pizzas? And I'm guessing that everybody wore gloves, like those plastic gloves. Oh, you didn't wear
gloves? You would be
gloves.
wrong. We did not wear gloves. We just washed our hands every now and then. And,
Wow.
as you'd imagine, sometimes there are rushes. If it's like Friday night or if it's Super Bowl Sunday, you may go an hour or two without washing your hands.
Well, that would be one thing if you're not, putting your fingers in your nose and touching cigarettes.
Yeah.
But that if you are going out and touching cigarettes and then you're coming back in and then making pizzas with no gloves, that's pretty vile.
They probably would. But no guarantees. Yes.
Yeah. The last time I consumed any Domino's food was have I mentioned this to you before?
I think so.
December 30th of 1999.
Right.
Okay. And it was the day before New Year's, and I remember being excited about a New Year's Day party for the year 2000, blah, 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 blah. But the day before, I was hanging out with some friends, and we went to the Domino's that was at the time located on King Street in Northampton, Massachusetts, and I got some wings, and I woke up violently ill. About 3 or 4 hours later. I think I had the wings around midnight or close to 1 a.m., woke up violently ill around 4 or 5 in the morning. And although you can never know for sure, I did attribute it to the consumption. I believe maybe I had a raw wing or a wing that was bad in some way. And even though it wasn't the pizza, at that point I said, you know what? this is terrible pizza, and I'm never going back to Domino's, and I've not been back since December 30th of 1999.
It's interesting because many people wake up on the morning of New Year's Day and
Right.
they feel sick for one reason or another.
Sure.
You actually woke up on the morning of New Year's Eve and felt sick.
That's right. I woke up on the morning of New Year's Eve. Yeah, exactly right. And never again, I've never done the $5 carry-out deal or any of that nonsense at Domino's Pizza. Okay, assessing people for suicide risk. This is a big topic, and it's complex for a number of reasons. Number one, the line between someone who is tending towards depression and someone who might actually act on suicide can be difficult to ascertain. It also carries with it significant stigma, and it also carries with it a sort of defense mechanism where sometimes people will know what questions they are being asked to assess their suicide risk. And a lot of people might know how to answer those questions in order to make it seem as though they are not at risk of suicide. A new study used an fMRI, functional MRI machine, to measure brain activity via blood flow. And they were, the people in the fMRI were shown 30 words related to suicide as well as positive and negative feelings, right? So they would see the word death, and then blood flow would be measured. They would see the word desperate, carefree, kindness, trouble, worried, and other words. And then the blood flow would be analyzed, and it would then be tested to see, does the blood flow when these words are shown correlate with the people who have been identified as having suicidal thoughts historically? And how does the blood flow correlate with those who have not been identified as having suicidal thoughts historically? And it turns out that blood flow in reaction to these words did successfully identify which people had a history of suicidal thoughts and which didn't. So this is a very interesting thing because you can learn to answer. Let's say you are experiencing suicidal thoughts, but you don't want that to be known because maybe it would impact your job, maybe it would impact, who knows? There's any number of reasons.
You may have to take treatment or go to a psychiatric hospital.
Any number of reasons why you might not want that to be known. You can learn to answer some of the normal suicide risk assessment questions the, quote, right way that won't indicate that you are having serious suicidal thoughts. It's way more difficult to control the blood flow in your brain when you are exposed to certain words. And so I'm not suggesting that the idea here is to forcibly submit people suspected of suicidal thoughts to fMRIs, but the point is that we are building our medical knowledge of ways other than these sort of self-assessments of asking people particular questions to be able to identify whether somebody might be predisposed to these thoughts. I think this is good. My only concern is when somebody is in a situation where they might be experiencing these feelings, it's sort of counterproductive to subject them to maybe this type of testing, right? It's not going to feel good in any way.
Right, and it also seems like it's so much on the record, too. I mean, there's data supporting it.
Yeah.
So maybe if someone has an interest in, like, a political career in the future or, like, going into the military or one of these jobs where you really can't have a history of mental illness,
yeah,
could that hinder their ability to get those jobs?
It's possible. Now, is it true that in politics you can't have a history of mental illness?
Well, no, but I think if the public learns about it,
it could impact just whether people would vote for you. Yeah.
I don't know if it was like Al Gore's first running mate or something had like taken antidepressants.
Oh, really?
There was a politician, maybe it was like in the 70s or something. I can't remember specifically.
Yeah.
And they had to choose a new running mate. Who maybe it was McGovern. Yeah.
Oh, I see. You're not his running mate when he ran for president.
Right. Yeah. I don't think it was Al Gore. I think it was maybe Jim McGovern or someone had a running mate, his first vice presidential choice.
Yeah.
And it came out that he had once taken antidepressants.
Yeah, yeah.
And they had to choose a new running mate because it was just such a big deal and so much more stigmatized back then.
I'm not surprised at all. And I'm assuming you don't mean Jim McGovern. You must mean
George McGovern.
George McGovern, yeah. And you know, it's interesting. Did I tell you I'm reading Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail?
No.
Yeah, I picked it up because a friend of mine recommended it. And it's Hunter S. Thompson following the eventual primary win of George McGovern in 1972. And obviously eventual loss in the 1972 presidential election. And it's an interesting book. It's quite a page turner for that genre. Okay, black licorice. Are you a fan of black licorice?
No, I think it's disgusting.
Oh, you do? Okay. I don't mind it, but I don't really ever get the black Twizzlers anyway. Apparently now, children and parents are going to have to be extra aware of not binging on black licorice, according to a new report from the FDA. The FDA is now saying that adults over 40 who eat 2 ounces of black licorice a day for 2 weeks could experience irregular heart rhythms, arrhythmia, or even having to go to the hospital, according to a news release. And I am really confused about these reports because I'm wondering, is this particularly black licorice? And is it because, like, does black licorice, first of all, I have a million questions. Are we talking about black Twizzlers when we say black licorice? Or are we talking about something that actually contains significant amounts of licorice root?
I don't even know what licorice is. Is that like a plant?
It's a plant.
Okay.
Yeah, it's that, I believe it's called anise is the way it's pronounced. If you've ever had anise seed, or, which is like a cooking thing. I don't know if it's big in veganism, but anyway, I've cooked with it before. That's that licoricey smell. And there's a couple of other seeds that have that licoricey smell. And it comes from licorice root, and that's what it is. Okay. Yeah, so red Twizzlers, I don't think have any red Twizzlers are like berry flavored.
If those would even be artificial or actual.
That's
licorice.
Why I'm asking. Isn't even black licorice completely artificially flavored? Like black Twizzlers. I'm sorry. Now I'm getting mixed up. I would assume so. So I don't even know what it is that they're talking about. But apparently the chemical that's the problem is a compound that looks almost like an unpronounceable Greek word. It's glycyrrhizin, which is a sweetening compound that can drop the body's potassium level and lead to heart issues. But again, I don't know. In the U.S., mostly when you say black licorice, people are thinking of black Twizzlers. And I just always assumed that was completely artificial and wouldn't have any licorice root in it.
Yeah, I guess that's another reason not to use or not to eat black licorice. At least in excess, I just don't think it tastes good to begin with.
Yeah.
But yeah, apparently it drops your potassium levels, and that's not good for your heart health.
Yes.
So don't eat it in mass, I guess is the revelation from this.
Do you buy candy when you go to the movies at this point?
I'm not a candy person.
Yeah, I've basically stopped. And when I was younger, I would buy a package of Sour Patch Kids or Raisinets or Snow Caps, which I liked. And I would have like the entire package during the movie, which just seems insane as an adult.
Because Halloween was yesterday, I actually saw a ranking of the healthiest and least healthy candies out there. And
hold on, don't tell me. Is the healthiest the peppermint patty?
No, I didn't see that one.
Oh.
It's Take 5, which is a newer one.
Oh, I don't even know.
Apparently it has like chocolate and pretzels and caramel and all that stuff.
Sure.
And then I think Smarties was at the top of the list. And then if you look at the bottom, it's maybe like Snickers, Butterfingers, M&M's. Not too big of a surprise. Smarties
are on the list as most healthy?
Healthy.
Yeah. Wow, I wonder why. I never knew them as Smarties. I knew them as, what was the other name? Sweet Tarts. Sweet Tarts. I think it's the same thing, just Smarties are smaller. I was a big Twix guy. That was my big thing.
Left or right Twix?
Well, I wouldn't know how to answer that.
Okay.
I wouldn't know how to answer that. Okay, so anyway, black licorice, apparently not good, but do we know if black Twizzlers actually have licorice root with this glycyrrhizin in it? That can't possibly be the right way to pronounce it. I don't know, but what we can all agree on is the worst Halloween candy was, growing up,
candy corn?
Milk Duds.
Milk Duds are gross too.
I always hated Milk Duds. Right in the trash with the Milk Duds.
Circus Peanuts.
I never got those.
Yeah,
I never got those. I did once get an apple with a razor blade in it.
No way.
No, wasn't it determined that was one of those urban legends?
Seems like an urban legend, yeah. Who's going to go out and do that?
And how do you do it in a way where it's not noticeable too? You'd have to like grow the apple around the razor blade. I don't even know how you would sneak a razor blade into an apple.
I actually saw stories we were considering putting on the bonus show too about marijuana-infused candy, and the fear that would be handed out during Halloween.
Did you kibosh that story?
No, it seems too unlikely.
It just hasn't made it on yet. Okay. All right. So anyway, if anybody did well on Halloween, let me know. 0 trick-or-treaters. I mean, I live in an apartment building, so like you can't get into the building to trick-or-treat unless you start buzzing, and people aren't going to buzz people they don't know. So no trick-or-treating whatsoever in my building.
I know of a family from India who moved in from the United States. It was their first day in the United States.
Yeah.
They moved in on Halloween, and they were very surprised to see a bunch of little kids demanding candy at their doorstep, dressed in all sorts of costumes.
There you go. Not like the old days, that's for sure. Okay, that's it for today. Talk to you tomorrow.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.